Hello, beautiful people. It is so lovely to be back on YouTube. Today, what I want to share with you, the summer of reading. What I've been up to, great books I've been reading. We often associate summertime with going outside, getting sun. You wouldn't think it's about like being inside reading, but I actually think the summer is a great time for reading. First of all, okay, you got a beach around you, go to the beach, bring a nice book. You're under the shade of your umbrella. Maybe you're on a hike, okay, and you get to that vista at the top. You're chilling under a tree. Okay, pop out that book, read a chapter or two, right? Maybe you can bring some poetry if you're with a group of people. Just start reciting poetry. Now that's the type of people I want to be with. People that would actually listen and vibe with that. So what else? You got that energy. Summer is about the sun giving you energy, and so you actually have the motivation. This is the time when in the winter, spring, I'm in a little bit of a reading rut, maybe sometimes a little tired, and all of a sudden, I'm doing more reading than I've done the whole other 5 months of the year. It's lovely. Or I just had a big workout, been sweating all day. Like, what better way to unwind than with a nice book, right? So I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna show two books. I'm gonna show everything I've read, and what I'm looking forward to reading the rest of August and September as we wind down the summer months. So the first two books I want to show you, Maya Angelou. Oh, this is Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, and Maya Angelou, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So the way I came across these books, I was at this wine flight event the week before I left Portland. I was moving away, and they were doing this to kick off. They had a partnership with the library, kicking off a summer reading event. And the wine flight, it was uh, eight, 10 wines, and they're each paired with a banned book. That was the theme. That was really cool because they had this sheet printed out. They'd have some adjectives, these descriptions that would match both like a tasting note of the wine, also match some of the vibes of the book. So there were some great ones shown. We got 1984, Persepolis. Uh, that's all I can recall right now. But what I really wanted to, the only one I had only read Persepolis, and maybe that was it from the ones they showed. I haven't read Fahrenheit 451 or some of the other ones shown. 1984. You hear so much about it. Eh, I'll get to it one day, right? But these two, why did I want to pick these up? Well, partly virtue signaling. I haven't read many female authors in my life, let alone black authors. But also, okay, let's start with this one. Sick freaking title. I know sing. Beautiful. And even just that name, Maya Angelou, doesn't even sound it's a real name. It just sounds like a name of a poet, of a writer, of a bard, bardess, right? And another reason, so The Bluest Eye. This is a book about basically white beauty. You ever seen those videos that have gone around about those kids who they show them? Do you want to play a white doll or do you want to play a black doll? And what's really sad and just puzzling is these black children, they choose the white doll pretty much all the time. And so this was a way to for me to explore that. Like, why is that? Why does that come about? And we're sort of with this one. This was a very, very vicious read. I was expecting to be sitting in my chair, having a blanket over me, nice cup of hot cocoa, just becoming a better person. But no, this is provocative. This challenged me. You know, um, this pushed to the darkest places, and it made me uncomfortable, vastly. And I don't know. I don't know if I came away with it a better person, but definitely more understanding. This is my first Toni Morrison novel, her debut. You know, I always wanted to read Beloved. Now after that, I don't know. I need a break. I need a break from Toni Morrison because she blew me away. She's an incredible writer. But oh my crap, she does not pull her punches at all. And we need more of that today. Like too much of writing in the modern times is just to make you comfortable, to sedate you, to escape so you can survive another day. But this is the type of thing that will actually like get you up and, join the revolution. Like you should be angry. You should be angry because oh, I'm sorry. Like I don't want to share this pain. This is but on the other hand, I know why the cage bird sings. This was more balanced, and something I want to say about both these books. This would be the type of books where nowadays there was a movie and they really did a strong, true to the source material adaptation. They would have to do a trigger warning, and I can kind of understand why they could justify banning it. I don't think they should, but I think there's also like what they're pushing. It's like progress. So there's some of that too, obviously. A lot of prejudice. These people making these laws and deciding books should be banned, which aren't. But it's also pretty damn graphic. We're talking about child molestation, child rape. That's right, child rape, and it's sad because this is Maya Angelou's. It's a memoir. It's a autobiography of sorts. Although it's written so much more beautifully than your average autobiography. I think you can just tell like Maya Angelou. I think while readers would like this, now even if you don't particularly care about black culture, it's not even just black culture. This goes beyond that. This is just American culture. This is one of those both. What's interesting about both these stories is I believe they proceed right before, like they're leading up to World War II. This book ends right about when it's starting, and Maya's talking about like being walking home in San Francisco, scared that she's gonna get bombed. That's how it was back then. But yeah, she has such a romantic, sensitive soul, and you can see how being this kind of dreamy child really wasn't compatible with her southern upbringing. Like it was, it's not like she thrived for sure. But also in a lot of ways she was scapegoated, and at the time it's sad. Like it shows how people didn't know how to cope with what she went through with being raped as a child. It was this attitude of just like suck it up. They even it's messed up. I was even like blaming her. Like, oh, was she being provocative? Mind you, she wasn't even like 11. She was like 10 or 9, maybe even 8. She was extremely young. The same thing in this book. Oh man, but I'd say like these are a great companion. Like this is why I wanted to read them around the same time, is because it helps you explore that aspect. And like Toni Morrison, especially, she actually like she goes into the mind of the monster, the rapist, at some point in the novel, and that's amazing. So I would say like this goes into the horror, of everything that I would say a shitty therapist would tell you to just like ignore. Oh, don't listen to the bad thoughts. Like okay, like I'm beautiful, I'm kind, I love myself, I am worthy. These self affirmations, which don't get me wrong, I love my self affirmations, but it can also be toxic positivity that doesn't address what's within you, the fire at your at your core. You know? I enjoy that. But I think Maya Angelou's is it's more balanced. And also she just had a sick freaking life as a memoir. I'm jealous. Like I've always been like this where I kind of romanticize suffering and hardship, but I think even outside of that, just people back then just had a more dynamic life than we did today. You know, it's that's why it's hard for writers, I think, to compete because today, because we're just not as well lived. A lot of us are gonna be those people who, we went to university. Yeah, we had like, life can be hard, but just we're just like a writing teacher, and throughout your adult life, and you write fiction and you put it out. Married, nice life, and nothing really out of the ordinary. Anyways, those are two great books. I finished both of them in July. Highly recommend it. If I were to recommend one out of the two, for sure this one. This is a 5-star read for me. Right, I'm so annoyed with these shadows. I'll try to fix that in the future. This lighting situation, it's a work in progress, guys. So next book in the stack, Cormac McCarthy's Outer Dark. So this is my first Cormac McCarthy novel, and let me just say, absolutely blown away. He is one of those authors that not only lives up to the hype and praise, I think he just blows it out of the water. Like, so a lot of these books that I'll be showing you, I doing it as part of a book club. That's what helped pushed me and motivated me. And so that was nice because normally, with these great hyped up authors, you want to read all these books. You have their one of their master works at the forefront. And for a master work, I tend to have this tendency to delay them. Oh, I have to be ready. I need space. I can't be reading another masterwork and this masterwork at the same time. I hold myself back like that sometimes. And so Outer Dark is a novel people don't even talk about it much. You're gonna hear about Blood Meridian, The Road, uh, No Country for Old Men. Never about this. This is his third novel. It's a short, 200 pages, and I think it's just a great way to get into Cormac McCarthy. Like it's a Southern Gothic, apocalyptic. As I was reading it, I felt this. The first thing after reading the first 30 pages, I wrote down, I wish Cormac McCarthy would have wrote fantasy. He would have written best fantasy book of all time. And I say this because when I came into fantasy, when I first got into reading, that's what I really wanted to read. The way people would describe these different fantasy books, it really called out to me. It's already something I liked from movies, television, video games, anime. The Witcher 3 being one of my favorite video games ever. But I was largely disappointed because a lot of these fantasy books didn't have this enchanting, timeless feeling that I was looking for. The only one that came close, mind you, there's plenty I haven't read. I read Sanderson's novels, the Mistborn trilogy, Joe Abercrombie's First Law trilogy, and I liked it. Like each one of the books, I rated at least 4 stars, but ultimately, I was disappointed and felt like I wanted more. The only one that came close and actually captured it, not just close, was Patrick Rothfuss, the Name of the Wind. I know there's a lot of critiques to have about his writing, and by his writing, mostly like how he writes woman. I guess the plot weakens in the second book. Never read that, but in terms of prose, in terms of just beautiful, beautiful writing, the Name of the Wind is it's amazing. And anyways, though, this isn't fantasy. This is Southern Gothic with some supernatural elements, some magical realism, I could say, but not really supernatural. But why I'm talking about fantasy is because he captures that. He captures like people call him a mythopoet, and I couldn't really explain what that means. But once you read this, you're like, oh, I get it. He's the mytho poet. So yeah, this 5 out of 5. If you haven't read Cormac McCarthy, just pick up anything. I think I feel like I'm willing to, even though this is the only one I've read, I'm just willing to stand on that because just knowing that there's so many other novels that people praise, and this is just his third, and he only gets better, and no one talks about him dropping off. I feel like for the rest of my life, Cormac McCarthy is gonna be someone I just look forward to, like just jumping into the next novel and just knowing it's gonna be amazing. I have high expectations for my next read, and I'm sure he's gonna blow it out of the water. Next book. Right. I read a lot in July. It's a great month. My first, Yukio Mishima, another first. Sound of Waves. So what's interesting about this one is that everything Yukio Mishima is known for is usually very, very violent stories, things about a dark, like being really angry about the influences of the West. That's not really in this novel. You know, very deep philosophical musings. There's none of that. This though, it's a nice fairy. It feels like this fairy tale of island living. You know, just the beauty of being a sailor, a fisherman. You know, the this unity of the people, this code of honor and ethics. You know, he made it very clear that nobody steals for X, Y, and Z reason. It's also a coming of age story. It's a love story, and the way the main character is written, I wouldn't say there's anything strongly distinct about him, but it's a nice like nicely ambiguous enough that you can self insert yourself in there, and it's very relatable. I would say it does retain that essence of speaking of masculinity that Yuki Mishima is really known for. You know, with his Son of Steel and all of that. Uh, I really love this. I just felt like this wasn't nearly as deep as these other novels I've told you about, but it was nice. It really made me long for the sea. I went out to the beach after reading this, and so nice. Maybe want to read Moby Dick among other things. Just now, some other books I've been dipping through after when they do have this sailor aspect. It's like it's enhanced for me now. Now I just enjoy it more. So also talking about beautiful writing, just another beautiful writer. Not in the same way Cormac McCarthy is. Cormac McCarthy for sure is a poet in a lot of ways where sometimes I don't even understand half of what he's saying, but he's painting a picture in my mind, so I don't even care anyway. Mishima's writing though, with this is a translated work, obviously. I can't read Japanese. It's a lot more clear what's being said, but it's still very beautiful. So Yuki Mishima's The Sound of Waves. Another 200 page read. I recommend it. So some of these next, novels, I don't have them on hand. Why? Because they're either on Kindle or I've talked to my friends about it and gave it away. So what we'll actually do is, okay, I'll show you what I'm in the middle of now. V, by Thomas Pynchon. So I'm currently reading this now, halfway through. Plan to finish this by the end of the month. So far, my favorite Pynchon novel I've read meaning since I would say April, May. I've joined this Thomas Pynchon book club. You know, we're getting ready for his movie coming out and his movie adaptation coming out in September. Also got his last book, seems, because he's really old, coming out in October. And I just thought it was a great way to dive into this author that is so controversial because he's either renowned as one of the greatest writing ever or super overrated because his novels are opaque, just deliberately challenging. It kind of makes you question what is the point of writing. If you're not writing for everyone to connect to it, but he challenges you because like I like his novel. Spoiler alert. So the two I've read since the start of summer go with Inherent Vice. And maybe I'll put a picture up video later, post that. So Inherent Vice was the last one I read, and this novel takes place in the hippie era, right at the end actually. So it's 1969, 1 week after the Manson murders, and that's a very interesting time period because that's when people say two things happen: the end of the hippie movement, also officially the end of old Hollywood. So it's a very strong shift in the culture, particularly California. And this was just a really fun read. This was what I call a strong dopaminetic read. Just as I was reading, just dopamine flowing through my brain, just getting a contact high as I was reading. Not my favorite. I would say my least favorite Pinchon novel I've read. Even then, that just makes it a low 4 out of 5 stars for me. But I thought it was great. There's a movie adaptation which mixed feelings on, but I think this paired with the movie does make it a lot more palatable. Uh, I'd simply describe it as this basically Pynchon's take on LA noir, private detective. You could think kind of like a Big Lebowski type of story if you ever seen that movie. Except instead of the main character being this bumbling fucking idiot, we still get a hippie main character for sure, but he's actually competent in many ways and a lot more charming. Does that make me sound like a Big Lebowski hater? I don't fucking care. uh, I struggle to talk about Pynchon novels the way I could talk about these other ones because he talks about so many different things. But I think it's a great read of just if you do really like that era of the 60s, if you are willing to grapple with Pynchon's maximalist postmodern style, it's for sure the most accessible work he's ever written, but not my favorite. So the other one though, so I gave this to my friend Joshua because I something's happened in my life where I've been talking to some of my friends about okay Thomas Pynchon, this author I'm getting to, and I'm always telling them like okay he's pretty difficult though. I wouldn't. I'm not sure if I'd even recommend it. It's difficult for me, let alone for you who you don't read as nearly as much as I do, which isn't some kind of flex. It's just meeting people where they're at. But I still tell them like what it's about, what it goes into, and it's funny they end up just wanting to read it, or they either pick up a book on their own. I've had my boss, my manager, he asked me like once I finished Inherent Vice, he asked me if he could pick it up and read it, and like so yeah, I gave it to him. That's why I don't have it right now. And I told him like, hey, I gave him a lot of options of stuff to borrow. I told him, hey, this is the hardest one. I hope you know that. And he's like, no, I want to read it. Okay. So my friend, I gave him Bleeding Edge, and Bleeding Edge is it's sick. It takes place between two time periods. So it starts off right after, sometime after the 2000.com crash. Something me being a Gen Z 25-year-old, I'm not really aware of this. Just something that you kind of just hear about in the background, something that happened. And then throughout the novel at some point the 9/11 disaster. So this is great because you get a badass female lead. She's this fraud investigator, also like very technically competent, knows her thing with programming, and just like with all Pynchon novels, she goes along this unraveling this mystery that gets just deeper and deeper and more entangled. And Pynchon throws all these different real world references at you, and it exposes a lot about like wow, I didn't I never really digged into oh did Bush 9/11, but it's not a meme, guys. There's a lot like just some short things the novel like puts out there. Think about this: why did the airlines, why were they shorting their stocks right before the disaster? That's something to think about, and lots more things I can't recall at the moment, but it's fun. That was the last novel he's written, and a lot of his fans, they don't like it as much, and I think similar to Mishima, because a lot of fans don't like that one as much either. I think some of these really great authors, they fall under the curse of being compared to their greatest works. And when you have these novels that depart from that, people, I don't think they rate it fairly. You know? So Bleeding Edge, it's sick. There's it's amazing. This Thomas Pynchon guy, he's old man, and he's talking about the battle between Nas and Jay Z in New York. The kids watching Dragon Ball Z. He's got these Russian characters that involved in the plot, talking about the greatest Russian animated film ever, and it's this little like hedgehog thing. I can't recall the name of it, and I didn't really get it, but there's just a lot there. It's nice, thick, 550 pages. That was what I finished in the beginning of the summer, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was something you definitely want to talk to somebody about it with, because you're gonna finish that novel, or you're gonna be in the middle of reading it, and you're either gonna be going in the internet, going in the rabbit hole, or you're just gonna want to tell somebody about it. That's the kind of effect that Pinchon has on you. All right, whew, how long we going here? I just feel like I'm like da-dun, 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 da-dun. But oh, reading gets me happy, gets me hyped, gets me excited, and I've had a lot of caffeine. So another book I've read. This is a book club I've done with my friend, the same friend I told you about who borrowed my copy, Bleeding Edge. We did The Stranger by Albert Camus. This is an absolute classic of existential literature, and I think it's great. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. A strength it has is how accessible it is. I think anybody with competent reading level can read this novel, and it's very simple. It has this kind of zen feel to it, and I don't want to I don't want to spoil too much of the plot, but it's a build up, a slow burn, and then boom, crescendos at the end. That's how it goes. And in this 128 page format, it makes you think of it's foundational in existentialism, absurdism. I think this was written in the 20s or 30s, and I think this was really revolutionary at the time, because like nowadays you may not think any of this is novel, but you think at the time like there wasn't a language for this how we have it nowadays. And the way he's able to explore these ideas without our pre-existing language, absolutely phenomenal. Great book. Now let's go to stuff I'm in the middle of. Okay, so Thomas Pynchon's B. I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but this is his debut novel. Bit of a naughty cover there. There's a lot of mystery about the meaning of V is. Is it a woman? Is it the intersection between? Because this is postmodernist as heck. Okay, you're jumping at one period. You're in 1899, turn of the century, and then you're at the 1950s. After World War II, people growing up, uh, it's the Depression, Great Depression era people, and I think what this reveals to me is that what Pinchon really likes to do is explore people displaced by time. What I mean by that is that these people came up in a certain generation, a certain movement. So in Bleeding Edge, main character, her and all of her friends were in the middle of this when tech was booming, when all these companies were spending money like crazy. Kind of similar to what happened in the past 10 years before the another tech crash. But this was even more so. This was back when the internet was fun, and it was in a lot of ways a metaphor for the Wild West. So in V, it's something similar here where we got this character Profane, and it shows this kind of meekness of Great Depression era people. Where imagine your youth was in the Great Depression. You know things were bad. The country was not thriving, and then you have this kind of implanted in your psyche. You never really move on from this time, and then all of a sudden, one day you wake up in New York, everything is thriving, everything is new, 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 and you kind of just feel like, what the hell, man? No, what the hell? He's a great novel. I think it's gonna be a 5-star read. So I when I do finish these next this novel and the other one I'm gonna talk about, for sure gonna make a video on it because I'm sure I just want to share the greatness of V. And if I don't think it's somebody postmodernism I won't recommend lightly, but if you're willing to take the dive into that, Pinchon's a great author to check out. So another one, this is also my Kindle. I'm not gonna take the time to go search for it, but it is Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. So Ishiguro is he's an interest already. His background's interesting because he's fully 100% Japanese, but he's English, British. He he grew up his entire life in England. He is, for all means and purposes, English. And so far, I'm about halfway through Never Let Me Go. It's another coming of age story, and this is something where I'm gonna do you all a solid, really not spoil anything about it. 'Cause I know my friend. He said like, don't don't learn anything about it. No, no, no. Going blind, man. Going blind. Okay. So all I'm gonna say is his strengths. Uh, it's very much more minimalist, I would say, especially compared to all the other stuff I'm reading. Compared to Pynchon, compared to McCarthy, it is. I'd say what's why do so many people like Ishiguro is because he's literary for the sensibilities of the modern person. We after the Pynchon and David Foster Wallace, there was nobody to really carry that flag of maximalism. It required you to be really, really intelligent. And what actually happened is we went the opposite. Completely, you go along one end, you just loop around. So minimalism became the big thing. And even then, though, there are some strengths behind minimalism. Like, even with this minimalistic style, very, very easy to get into, you can still have things like the unreliable narrator. Already there, I might be saying too much. But what I really am impressed by with Ishiguro is the way he writes woman. You know, after finishing the Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison novel, this is all about, these are first person view of woman. And going Never Let Me Go, it was a seamless transition. And these are, I think, what else he's good at is capturing youth, the way we would think about things, experience things. We were in middle school, elementary school, high school, and but also as an adult, how we recall things from and how that perception really it's complex. All right, so those are the novels I've read. This is what I'm reading now. Um, yeah, summer's just a great time for reading. I really recommend just it's not too late. You haven't started reading anything. Pick something up. Go, in fact, go to your local library. Every single library, like most of them I know of, they have some kind of summer reading program. I know a lot of them are for kids, people still in school, but I'm sure you talk to the people at the front desk. There's definitely something for adults. You know? Sometimes they have this kind of like challenge thing you can do. Sometimes you can actually get linked up with the group. I think getting involved in some kind of book club can be a really great way to motivate you and just get more out of what you're reading. I Yeah, guys, reading is sick. Watch out for my next video where I'm gonna talk about how to get back into reading, especially if you're a Gen Z brain rotted fellow like myself. Peace out, guys. Lovely day.